I thought we were going to have some music.
No, we did on the Zoom meeting.
Oh, great.
You just couldn't hear it.
Okay, I will now call the April 6th Board of Education meeting for Lane Community College to order. Welcome. This is our first in-person meeting as a Board of Education since February 2020. So welcome, everybody. We're very excited about being together this evening, but even more so, I am incredibly proud of the work that staff did to ensure that we could meet the needs of our community and our stakeholders. This meeting is also being streamed to anybody who wants to view remotely, and any community member can give public comment remotely. So a big thank you to Donna Zamolik, our board secretary, Randy Painter, Terry Holloway, and John Davey for all of their hard work to make this possible. That being said, there clearly will be there'll be a learning curve and some adjustments as we get accustomed to this new digital environment. So if everybody could be patient with us, that's great. And we will go ahead and start with the land recognition by Sam Ramberg, who is an LCCEF member. Is Sam here with us, or is he in? There he is. Thank you, Sam. Welcome.
Hi there. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for giving me time to speak and honor Native peoples and their lands. We begin our meeting with the acknowledgement that the land we are on is the traditional homeland of the Kalapua people. The Kalapua were stewards of this land for over 14,000 years. Before their traditional way of life and was forever disrupted and destroyed. We will start our meeting with humility and reverence for the original inhabitants, the Kalapua. I would like to express gratitude and appreciation to those who have stewarded this land from time immemorial. Land acknowledgements do not exist in past tense or historical context. Colonialism is a current ongoing process, and I seek to build an understanding of our present participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. So I'd like to adopt the agenda with flexibility. Is there any opposition to adopting the agenda with flexibility? Okay, if there's none, then we've adopted the agenda with flexibility. We will also take a moment of silence this evening for the war and suffering that is happening in Ukraine. And I would also like to mention that that is not the only place in the world where that type of situation is happening. And so we could just take a moment of silence for the people of Ukraine, as well as any place in the world that is suffering the violence of war. Okay, thank you. Let's continue. Dr. Hamilton with the President's report.
Thank you, Chair Radula, and I also want to echo my welcome to everybody. This is extraordinarily exciting. Some of you met each other for the first time in person on my board today. Oh my God, it was amazing. It's almost emotional that people have worked here for over a year and never met each other in person. Some of our board members are meeting them for the first time. So yes, they might be taller or shorter than you thought, but they're ours now. So so welcome, and we again I have to Chair Fryland and thanking the staff. They have been incredible. They've met with us so many times, and I can't thank you all enough. And I do ask Grace pardon tonight because things will probably pick up. We just don't know where yet. So we're hoping for that all the technology behaves and that we go along with it. So congratulations to the sports. Our LCC women's basketball team, Coach Greg Shealy, had an amazing season. So we want you to read about all of that in the media reports. Another shout out to our chamber director and our chamber choir, Matt Svoboda, for his end of year performance with the choir. They are marvelous, and I hope that now that we're back in person, you get to hear them more and more. And we have a clip in the formal report, not a survey, let nothing disturb you, based on the writings of Saint Teresa de Avila. So it's all about patience and faith, and we can all use a little of that. Want to offer congratulations to ESL and ESC for winning the Schaefer Innovation Award for their literacy project. Very exciting, congratulations. Career Pathways, leading the state's efforts to improve student access to SNAP and other community resources. You know, in the few years that I have been there, it has amazed me how wonderful our program is, and it continues to amaze me as we exponentially increase the number of students gaining these benefits. So congratulations to all of them. The powwow was a wonderful success. I have a picture of myself holding a tarantula. It was just wonderful. It was a wonderful experience for the community, for the students. And I really want to give a shout out to the NASA students and Lori Tapahanzo, their faculty coordinator, for supporting this just wonderful, wonderful event. Women's History Month was also in March. We did a panel discussion, redefining work, learning from the pandemic lessons. I was able to interview leaders in higher ed, healthcare, and business and industry, and everybody had same common challenges. But the good news was, from these challenges, we all learned new things on how we could reinvent work for the coming future. If you haven't seen our website, a shout out to Brett Roulette, to Kyle Schmidt, to Lori Brandon, and the whole web team. Congratulations on our launch. Yes, there will be errors and imperfections, but we ask you for some grace as we work through those. It's a wonderful, very student-facing website, and I encourage you to take a look. So some good financial news last month. Congress passed the Consolidated Appropriations Act 2022. These funds will be garnered from our government through September 30th, or 2022. These funds are going to help increase Pell funds, grants, and direct awards to not only Adel College, but many colleges. In addition, you're going to see monies for the community project funding, which includes monies for the health clinic at Cottage Grove and our aviation academy, which means new planes in the air. That is wonderful. The Oregon Legislators Joint Task Force on Student Success for Underrepresented Students in Higher Ed is currently conducting a statewide listening tour, and they plan to visit Lane Community College on April the 25th. We hope to share more details on how all of you can testify about how valuable our services are at community colleges, and that we could always use additional funds. The OCCA annual conference is next week. In addition to being updated on the state's higher education platform, we'll be congratulating our own board member, Rosie Pryor, on receiving the Howard Cherry Award for Community College Service. The award is so well deserved, and we offer early congratulations to board member Pryor. Media relations, we've been in the news a lot, lots of exciting things going on. I encourage you to click some of the links and read some of these reports. And in memory tonight is our former board member, Paul Allman. He passed away in March. Even in his retirement, Paul continued to advocate for his community and community colleges. He served as the Zone 1 board member from December 2002 to 2009. Our condolences to his family. Early first thing in the morning, I'll be at the PTK Catalyst Convention celebrating our PTK Honor Society, which is an honor society for two-year colleges, along with Associate Dean Jennifer Fry, PTK Advisor C. Rosenau, and some students. It's really such an honor to attend this event. It's like the biggest academic cheerleading event one can imagine. So it's fun to really be there and celebrate with our students. That concludes my report. Thank you, and I look forward to our next meeting.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hamilton. And just a word to everybody about some of the technology. In order for people to hear you on the Zoom, the remote, you do need to use the microphone. This is for us to be heard. You do also need to speak loud enough for the owl to turn towards you to pop you up in one of these boxes here as well. So to, kind of keep the technology running smooth, we're gonna all project our theater voice. So we're gonna move on to public comment. Board policy BP 320 states that the board chair will explain at the outset statements from the audience that the board will not respond directly to issues raised by the audience, but will refer those issues to the president for appropriate action. However, we do appreciate attendees' participation in tonight's LCC board meeting and the willingness of stakeholders to address the board. I believe the first person that we have providing comment is Margaret Robertson from LCC. We'd like to ask each person who is presenting to keep their comments to 3 minutes. And I believe Margaret should be in the digital sign-in room.
Good evening. I'm Margaret Robertson. I'm on the full-time faculty in advanced technology, but I'm reading this statement on behalf of a part-time instructor who could not be here tonight. When LCC went online in spring 2020, all my classes were canceled. I became unemployed after nearly 2 decades at Lane. I have seniority in the classes I teach, and yet, due to the cancellation terms in the contracts, I was without work. I applied for unemployment. Oregon could not find me in their databases in spite of having no trouble finding me year after year when they took money from my paychecks. I applied for the aid available from the union. I pulled out the information I usually gave to students about finding food banks and other resources, and I started getting resourceful. My children and I ate a lot of meals at my parents' home. The next term, LCC was happy to offer me classes now that I was useful to them again. I will not pretend that this callous behavior and lack of loyalty from my employer has not damaged my esprit de corps. It has. Later, I had another class canceled. Not all my work, just 50%, so I didn't have to suffer through being snubbed by Oregon unemployment again. Happy day. Back to mom and dad's for dinner. It was a fine time bonding with family. One must always look on the bright side. LCC is a machine. When you are useful, you are used, and when you are inconvenient, you are cut loose to fend for yourself. I know which cog I am in the machine, and I am a good cog. I turn well and efficiently. But don't ever ask me to take one for the team for the sake of loyalty, or imply that anything is a two-way street. I've been in the machine a long time. If I didn't love helping my students, I would say something unprofessional on my way out the door. After all, my mom makes the best dinners, and she always has room for us on her couch. Thank you for listening.
Margaret. Up next, we have Jeffrey Nutting to speak on S3. That'll be followed by Ian Coronado. Jeffrey is here with us in person this evening, and I believe Ian will be in the digital. Welcome. Thank
Hi
you.
there. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, all. I'm Jeffrey Nutting. I've worked at LCC for close to 16 years with some specialized support services, helping those with developmental and intellectual disabilities achieve their goals by assisting them to gain employment in the community with their participation in our vocational training program. Specialized Support Services, also known as S3, has been part of the college for almost 50 years. S3 students' presence on campus as learning and working human beings is in harmony with the school's diversity model, which includes access, equity, and inclusion. At a Zoom meeting attended by Dr. Gerald, Shane Turner, and Anna Yates Tapia, 2 LCCEF union officers, along with the staff from S3, Dr. Gerald informed us that S3, these are my words, what I heard, is on the table for closure by the college due to unspecified budget reasons. Close to 5 years ago, we were told that we should start looking for other jobs. This was after a similar meeting with Brian Kelly, Dennis Carr, along with our director, Elise Stone. Again, S3 has been part of the college for almost 50 years. It adds diversity, models inclusion, and gives an opportunity for a section of the population that in the past has been put in a corner and hidden away. In such places as the Fairview Training Center, formerly located in Salem, which was closed in 2001. Having the students from S3 perform work on campus alongside of and in view of those pursuing their degrees from Lane shows that our college is mindful of those with disabilities and has the aptitude to see what great value our students add, not only to the college, but to the community as well. Since the February 23rd meeting, I've heard much about what is being considered for a program. I don't know what to believe. I respectfully ask that the Board of Education, I respectfully ask the Board of Education to support the S3 program. It has ability not only to thrive, but also excel and make money for the college. Hiring staff in ways that reflects the skills would help to make this attainable. Specialized support services provides an opportunity for people with disabilities to be integrated with other college students who are also pursuing degrees. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. So up next, we have Ian Coronado, followed by Tracy Weimer. Welcome, Ian.
Good evening. Chairperson Fragala, members of the board, President Hamilton. My name is Ian Coronado, and I'm the Dean of the division that includes Academic Technology and Tutoring Services and Lane's Library. I'm here tonight to share updates about the library. Like nearly all programs and departments at Lane, our library went remote at the start of the pandemic with no student or public access until June of 2020. That's when a small dedicated crew of library staff set up shop under a canopy over on the west side of campus by the parking loop so that they could provide materials checkout and return service. That group relocated the following fall into the breezeway in Building 4 to be better sheltered from the elements and weather, and they remained there until the summer of 2021, when materials and return services moved back to the library space in the Center Building. During this time, when many other services were closed to in-person access, the library remained open and collaborated with areas across the college to help distribute or provide access to materials to students from those services or programs. Tonight, I'd like to recognize Andrew Tessendori, Shannon Moots, and Raymond Bailey, who kept the materials checkout and return service running until we opened the library in the fall of 2021. The library has also offered virtual research help and student technical assistance since the start of the pandemic via email, chat, and real-time Zoom support. And we will continue to be available and offer those services as real-time online assistance to students as we emerge from this pandemic. Each week, we see more students in the library. Some students have been at Lane for 1 or more years and are just setting foot into the library for the first time. The library is settling into a new sort of normal. It's a place for students to connect to Zoom classes before or after their on-campus classes. It's the primary site for student printing on campus. Many students use it to complete their coursework. It's a retreat for those seeking quiet space. Many students have remarked that they are grateful for the opportunity to meander the book stacks for the first time since the pandemic started. This spring, we'll be reintroducing Study Jam for the first time since we went remote. During Study Jam, we collaborate with tutoring services. We extend library hours into the evening. We provide food and drink purchased with foundation funds and in-kind donations from community partners. Each of the first few times we ran the Study Jam in the past, we had students remarking that they would not have eaten that day if it had not had been for the food provided. We'll have tutoring staff on hand to assist students during Study Jam, and they'll be running individual and group studies. We're all excited to be able to offer this again. There's so much more to the library. I'd like to invite you all to visit and learn about the role that the library plays in Lane's student success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian. So up next, we have Tracy Weimer. Do I need to speak to do the Jeopardy? There she is, great. Welcome, Tracy.
Hello.
Welcome. Can you
Hi.
hear us?
I was waiting for the timer to come up because I've got a much different view now. Should I just go? Boom. Greetings to the Board of Education and all the staff members working behind the scenes this evening to support the first live and in-person remote meeting of the Board of Education. As we bring the community back together while still maintaining a safe distance in this lingering time of COVID, I am here before the board to advocate for S3, Specialized Support Services. My name is Tracy Weimer. I'm an alumna of Lane Community College. I graduated with accounting in 2012 and business transfer in 2013. And I'm a full-time classified staff member serving as the lead project coordinator in the Office of Equity and Inclusion. I enrolled at LCC in January 2009 with an 8th grade education, a GED, and a year of for-profit college accounting. A year later, I joined the officer team of Phi Theta Kappa, PTK, Go Sigma Theta. And after we put on Lane Stock that year, I joined student government as well. It was in student life that I really began to understand the S3 structure, contribution, and value that they bring to the institution. My last year at LCC, when I was working as a LETS person in a multicultural center, I interacted with these amazing employees on a daily basis. Our campus hosts one of the few access points for education and vocational training for intellectually and developmentally disabled individuals in the region. Here, they can grow and develop skills that will help them be employable long-term. Here at Lane, where we've been welcoming this unique and wonderful community since just a few years after our founding. I'm a little emotional. S3 started in 1973, which happens to be the year I was born. People who receive S3 employment training and support are termed student workers because they are both employees at LCC as well as students at LCC. I assume that brings in FTE. I'm just asking that the board consider the value that they bring and maintain our commitment and give them a boost and not the boot.
Thank you, Tracy. So Brett, could you check and make sure that Tracy Henninger Wiley or Peggy Oberstaller are not in the webinar waiting side?
We do have one phone number. I don't know who it belongs to. Here.
We have a couple people signed up who, I just want to make sure they're not in the waiting room.
Hi, if you've joined us by telephone and if you're waiting to speak, could you please give us your name? If your phone ends in 576.
Okay, so do we have anybody named Tracy Henninger Wiley or Peggy Oberstaller that you can see in the waiting room? How about Gary Mort or Jessica Knock?
No, we just have the one phone number.
Okay, great. So that is the end of our public comment. Thank you. We can breathe a bit easier now, Brett. I'm just really appreciative of the opportunity for people to be able to provide comment remotely, public comment remotely. It's pretty remarkable. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have our consent agenda. Is there anything that board members would like to talk about? Steve?
Yeah, I have a few this evening. I'd like to pull items E, F, and G.
So E, student activity, F, technology fee, and G, employment agreement for President Bolger. Is there anything else that any other board member would like to pull from the consent agenda? Okay,
I move approval for the consent agenda.
perfect, thank you. So Mike moves approval of the rest of the consent agenda and it was seconded by Rosie. Okay, any discussion of your motion, Mr. Ister? No. Okay. Donna, can you please call the roll for the approval of the consent agenda minus E, F, and G?
Ollie Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus.
Aye.
Mike Ister,
Aye.
Austin Bulley,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Where's the mute button?
Rosie Fryer,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye. So those items that were not pulled in the consent agenda passed unanimously. Okay, so let's go ahead and move to the first item, E, student activity fee. And Mindy, you might want to approach the dais as well in case there are any questions that you need to respond to, Steve.
Yep, so this item was, they brought before us a few weeks ago, just to showcase, we got a sense of things prior to the votes tonight. I, at that point in time, asked for some additional information, not because I was necessarily for or against, the increase in fee requested by Osborne, but just as a process issue, I felt like we ought to have some insight into what that was all about. Since then, I believe we received some information from Mindy. Thank you for that. I read through it. My read of it, however, was largely that it was a process document. This is the process that the student government went through, that Osborne had to go through in order to move that forward, and that it's endorsed and supported by the institution's leadership. So I saw that. I appreciated all of that. I guess for me, I'm still looking for some additional documentation. I recognize it's probably too late at this point to get it. So I just wanted to make clear why I'm going to vote in opposition to this. It's first off, to be clear, and I got a few of these kinds of things tonight, so I'm going to be, seen as curmudgeonly. I'll do my best to, do it as kindly as I can. It's not opposition to Osborne per se. They're who they are, what they represent, is largely in line with my own politics. I actually did go to their website just to get a feel for what they're doing lately, because I'm not always as in touch as even though I know generally what they do. So, they're supporting textbook reduction costs. They were supporting, let's see, the other thing that caught my attention was 100% renewable energy, all stuff that I myself support. My concern, and the reason why I'm going to vote against it, is I just didn't see clear information about what their budget issues are, what their budget is currently, what the constraint is, or the need is that to justify an additional 50 cents. It also, because Osborne is a little different than most student organizations, they operate, on multiple campuses across the state. And so I assume that they're making this similar request at all kinds of campuses across the state. I know they're doing it at the University of Oregon, for example. They may succeed in some places and may fail in others. And so that would result in an unfair burden placed on the institutions that agreed to that fee increase, as opposed to those that don't. We don't have any information about that. We don't have information about what they might do with an additional 50 cents. Again, not in opposition to Osborne per se, but I just think that it's important for me to make clear that that I take the budget issues really seriously. This has an impact on our students, as do every single penny that we spend. And if I'm gonna vote in support of any of those things, I think we ought to expect of our student groups the same that we expect of our provost and other folks who bring forward budget recommendations. We ask for justification if we haven't seen it. So I'm gonna vote against it.
And did you have a question?
No question. I just wanted to clarify my rationale.
Okay, and is there any other board member that wanted to speak to the student activity fee? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve the proposed student activity fee, $63.57 for 2022-2023, an increase of 50 cents.
Second. Okay, so moved by Austin, seconded by Rosie. Austin, did you want to speak to that motion?
No, haven't been in student government before. I understand that costs increase and so forth. So I'm okay with this motion.
Mike?
I would like to support what Steve is saying. It seems to me that it's not unreasonable to ask for justification if there's an increase being requested. I'll vote for the motion, but I for the record, I think it's reasonable in the future for groups that are asking for an increase to provide some rationale for it.
Rosie?
Thank you. I'm intrigued by the conversation. I guess I am somewhat of the board historian at the site date, and I would just like to offer up that there's precious little that students have sort of universal control over. And this process is one of them, in my humble opinion. It has not historically been the approach of Lane boards of education to second guess the recommendations brought forward by students. Our approval is strictly pro forma. And so I intend to support the recommendation that students have forwarded. They have a process, they've followed their process, and I have confidence in their recommendations. So that's why I will vote yes.
Anyone else? Okay, Donna, can you call the roll? We have a motion to approve the student activity fee.
Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
No.
Mike Ister,
Aye.
Austin Fullnagy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Nay.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragile,
Aye. So that motion carries. The next one we have is the technology fee, and great, thank you, Richard, for approaching the podium. We'll see if you need to answer any questions. Steve?
All right, number 2, I did let Dr. Plott know that I would be bringing this issue. I didn't give him a lot of time, but a little bit of time to prepare. I just felt a couple of things that what we're being asked to contemplate or vote for actually right here now is something close to a 20% increase in the tech fee. And up till now, while there've been some documentation submitted for us to review that, all of our focus has really been on the tuition increase, and for good reason, right? That there's more money at stake there. There was a lot of discussion about how best to apply it, the cap versus the non-cap, all of that. So there's a lot of focus there. I think to some extent, to the extent that it distracted us from having any discussion almost whatsoever about a $2 per student per credit hour tech fee increase. And that amounts to something like $75 a year for a student who would be taking 12 credits each term, fall, winter, and spring. So it's not exactly insignificant. Neither is it necessarily unnecessary, but I just felt like we ought to have some discussion and scrub the issue a little bit before we vote in support of it. The last thing I'll say, Dr. Plott, before turning it over to you is, for me, this vote and the other one subsequent to it that we'll be making tonight really set us up to, this is the opportunity to take an objection. Once we vote for this and once we vote for the tuition increase, we've essentially established our budget. Everything that we do thereafter is, perform. This is the opportunity. So I'd like to take advantage of it to get a little bit more information from you as to, why it's justified, what it'll be used for, and have we sufficiently scrubbed it for every opportunity to keep it, to put downward pressure on it and prevent ourselves from asking the students to absorb what amounts to, I think it's an 18% increase.
Thank you very much, Chair Fragile, Member Mattel, and respond. The tech fee supports our student workers. It also supports student success holistic services, softwares, infrastructure, technology equipment that they use in and out of the classroom. First off, we have grants that have subsidized many of the expenses that we have. Those grants are at the end of life. That alone is $250,000 this year and will increase. Software services across the board are anywhere from 5 to 18% increases in every software we have that is being renewed. Those are fixed expenses that we have no measure in. We either accept the increase or we have to resign the service. The implication, and we minimize the expense. This is the bare minimum that we can do to meet the obligations that are current. We are not increasing for a reserve build. We're increasing to pay what we owe. If we do not get the increase, we will have to reduce services. Okay? And we will have to go through with the different members here at the college and say, we do not have the funds for these softwares or this equipment. What will we do without it? That's the fast explanation. The other is that every month, the technology equipment that we buy increases in cost and increases in delivery time. The longer we wait, the more expensive it becomes. For example, there are switches, which is how, like if you're passing the bread at the table, that's how we pass data from your laptop to your phone. These switches are 14 years old and the end of life is long overdue. Will this increase pay for it? No, but it will help subsidize as we address the priorities first. And it's just the best we can do at this point. And I wish I had better news, but I know nobody likes an increase, but sometimes it's forced on us. And in this case, that's it.
Austin?
And just to be clear, so if we were to vote this down, this would reduce our capabilities of high flex, just technology services for our students in general, and our capabilities of doing remote learning. And so
Every technology we have would be affected because the softwares that support many of the things we would then have to examine what do we have to cancel. So I couldn't tell the immediate effect, but it would be broad.
I want to make a motion to approve a $2 increase in the technology fee effective summer term 2022.
Okay, moved by Austin, seconded by Rosie. Austin, did you want to speak to that motion?
Absolutely. Essentially, we want to make sure that we have all capabilities of high flex learning and all the technology necessities needed for remote learning for our students, and also obviously technology for our staff.
Rosie?
You will all be amused to learn that this is actually an increase I can support. The reason is, it's very clear to me that there's a direct relationship between the increase in the fee and the value added that students will receive. And for that reason, I intend to support it.
Angela?
No questions, Dr. Clark, thank you. I seem to recall a technology increase last year, and a technology fee increase, I believe it was last year. This is because I remember voting for it, which is also out of character for me. Can you tell me, I'm looking through the old files on Board Docs and Board Docs, and I can't find the documentation. And I'm wondering if you can tell me about what that technology fee increase funded and sort of what the percentage was and variance this year.
There was a historic fee that I found in file some two to 3 years ago, and it was increased to $11. This one is the current increase, bringing almost 3 years today. Paul, I could March 2020. March 2020 was the last payment cycle, was the last fee increase that we had. The difference is that since the pandemic, all softwares taking advantage of the situation have increased their cost to us. And that goes from our LMS to our ERP. I got, just for example, off the cuff, Ben said, well, we're going up at least 30,000 next month. And that's not finished with their increases. So this is to help because that runs our degree program, which our students use to keep on track with their progress. So they keep coming monthly, and we're not done yet because our fiscal year starts July 1. We have estimated, based on the increases, the closest figure we could have that would meet those needs without having to have services. Does that answer your question?
Not really.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to understand the sort of cumulative increase that we're moving to students within the technology fee space. I want to say it was something like $2 last year as well.
The one I have on file was March 2020. I don't have a later one than that, man.
It must be very memorable for me then, I guess. Thank you.
Okay, Steve.
Thanks for the explanation. I appreciate that. I just want to let you know, I'm going to vote in support of it. So this next question is, it doesn't really have much bearing on it, but can you give us a sense of what we should expect going forward? Is this the kind of thing where we're, based on your experience, we're going to have to push onto our students something like on the order of 15 to 20% per year? Or is this this is an unusual year because of the pandemic, we're playing catch up?
This is a reset for most of our software based on the life cycles that we have, are 3 to 5 years. Many came due this year, and the software across the board went up, took advantage of the renewals. The prices that we are getting will lock in, for 3 to 5 years based on the contract, which all contracts are sent over to legal. They're reviewed and sent back to me for signature. So I am hoping and look forward, that's why we're reducing the amount that we've asked for, that we will be locked in at least for 36 to 60 months. So we won't have these kind of experiences again with this.
Thank you.
For anyone else? Hey, Donna, can you call the roll, please? We have a motion on the table to approve the technology fee, which is a $2 increase.
Molly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Ister,
Aye.
Austin Polnaghy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Freigelin.
Aye. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Platt.
Thank you.
Okay, so up next we have item G, President Bolger, employment agreement. Steve?
All right, well, once again, this is the last of the three and the one that I'm least looking forward to bringing to everybody's attention, but it's an important issue for me, and so I am wanting to let folks know that I'm planning to vote against it. But I also recognize it's a very unusual thing to do at the start of a new president's employment, and so I just wanted to have an opportunity to make a statement, enter it into the record, into the minutes, so that it's just very clear the reason for that, and then it doesn't become a distraction beyond what's, beyond what I have to say this evening. So I will jump into it. First off, I want to be very clear that I'm absolutely in support of Dr. Stephanie Bolger as our next president. I voted for her, as did the rest of you. We voted unanimously a couple of weeks ago for her. Her credentials are stellar, and we have every reason to believe and hope that she'll make an excellent next president for this institution. And I firmly believe that, and I will do everything that's within my power to help her succeed, because her success is the success of the college. So I want to be really clear about that. I did also, by the way, called her and talked to her a couple of nights ago. I had a nice short conversation to let her know as a courtesy that I would be taking this move, and I explained to her what I'm about to explain to you all, so that it was very clear this is not something personal. This is not be looked at by her or anybody else as some kind of anything less than full endorsement of her arrival here and assuming the president's role. My issue is actually with the contract that my fellow board members are offering her. So it's not her, it's the contract that we're all offering. I have great respect for my board members. I take great pride in working with you all, and have thoroughly enjoyed that this year. This particular time, I find myself at odds and felt like I needed to make my opinion heard. So that's what I'm doing. When we, after deciding on or selecting Stephanie, then we entered sort of the negotiation phase. One of the sort of standard components of that is to look at the market comparators, and the three that stood out, at least for me, but I think they're the standard ones that we use, are the presidents of Chemeketa, Central Oregon Community College, and of course our own experience here, largest contract we looked at as well. There are others, but those are the ones that are our best comparators. And if you take the average of those three, they're very close in line, that they don't range very much from each other. It demonstrates that the market for this position right now is somewhere in the neighborhood of $240,000. We're paying, a bit north of that. And that's an issue that's something I take issue with. Again, I said this before, I don't want to just make it clear again, it has nothing to do with Stephanie per se, but these are people who have 3 to 5 years experience in the role of a president. Stephanie has not had that opportunity yet. We expect her to do well, but she hasn't actually had that opportunity yet. And I don't agree with the idea of adding upward pressure to executive salaries. It'll only cause our competitors to feel like they need to respond in kind, and it's an ever upward spiraling thing that I am largely against. I don't want to put upward pressure. I think paying at market is fine, but paying above it, I take issue with. And the last thing I'll just say is a longstanding issue for me. I make the exact same arguments for 8 years when I was on the board at EWEB. I lost most of those arguments. I had some success in bringing things down a little bit, but I generally lost. But if you review those minutes, you'll see I had made precisely the same arguments there. And my kids and my wife will say the same thing about me around the dinner table, complaining about folks, or about spiraling costs at the executive level. So it's a longstanding issue. It's something, like I said, I took issue with at EWEB. I'm gonna take issue here, and I expect it. I think it's something that I'll carry with me to every board that I sit on here. But for those reasons, and again, not because of anything that Stephanie has done or earned, I expect to fully support her. I am gonna vote against this contract.
Austin,
I make a motion to approve the employment agreement of Stephanie Bulger, effective July 1st, 2022.
Second.
okay, moved by Austin, seconded by Mike. Austin, did you want to speak to that motion?
Well, Steve, you're not wrong, in regards to executive pay and so forth. I think you put it really well that there's like an arms race essentially for executive pay. And I want to essentially say that, you're not wrong in that regard. And I think a lot of working families would look at executive pay and go, oh, that's a lot. But one thing that I want to kind of just emphasize is that we should look at whether if it's the pay of our executives, our faculty, our classified professionals. They are investments, not expenses. We are investing in our people, and we're investing in our community as a result of that. $109 million operational expenses led to nearly $721 million in economic impact within our community. So when we invest in our people, we invest in our community. So I definitely hear that. I remember negotiating the contract for the president of Climate Community College. I remember how difficult it was to see the numbers and see the expenses. But Dr. Bulger is investing in our community, and I'm willing to invest in her.
Anyone else? Okay, so Donna, can you call the roll, please? Or we have a motion on the table to approve the employment agreement of Stephanie Bulger effective July 1st, 2022.
Lily Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Ister.
Aye.
Austin Fullnagy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
With regret, nay.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fregala,
Aye, that motion carries. Okay, so that was our consent agenda for the evening. Holly?
Chair Fragula, I have a question, and it goes back to F. Would I be able to ask that of record? I know it's passed and approved and everything, but I just want to.
Certainly, you may ask a question. Richard, could you approach the dais, please?
I'm looking at the balancing framework that you submitted, and I just had a question on page 2. Under other revenue, the KLCC administrative recovery, 100,000. I was just.
I'm gonna defer that.
Okay, to ask for clarification, is that gonna set precedents? Is that something, where did that come from?
So can I just ask a clarifying question? Zach, is that going to be part of?
Is it part of the budget?
Of the, I think it's C? Or, yeah, so
It will come up.
do you mind holding that question?
I don't, thank you.
Okay, great. So you were right on track.
Okay.
All right, so that does finish our consent agenda. We have 4 action items tonight, and the first one is bond and renewable energy. Jennifer Hayward, you want to go ahead and approach the dais, please?
Knew that was gonna happen.
Take your time.
Okay, so I could just give a 3-minute overview of the paper that I submitted. if you'd like.
Please.
Okay. So the bond has budgeted $2 million for renewable energy because, well, at least in part because the board told us to, and because the resolution in support of the community benefits agreement told us to dedicate 1.5% to renewable energy, and that is what $2 million is 1.5%. So the state of Oregon also has a law that we have to dedicate 1.5% of major construction projects to renewable energy or green energy technology, as they call it. And with our bond, that equates to about $1.7 million. The state law, though, has really specific projects that fit under the heading of green energy technology, and none of those green energy technology projects are really a good fit for Lane for various reasons that we explained in table 2. So we would like to propose that the board approve us seeking an exemption from following the law, but rather follow the spirit of the law and do green energy technology projects over and above what the law would require that are a better fit for Lane. And so that's basically what we're asking you to approve tonight. But if you do approve that, what we'll do is submit the request for exemption, and then the 2 areas that we want to explore spending the $2 million on are a ground source heat pump system that would be potentially more cost effective than any of the other options that are in table 2, and also would result in a lot more carbon dioxide reductions than any of those other projects too. And we would also explore implementing energy efficiency strategies that again would be a lot more cost effective for Lane and a lot more and a lot better at reducing carbon. So we're not necessarily asking you to give us direction on A or B, the ground source heat pump or energy savings. We'll explore both of those and move forward. But if you do have any thoughts on those that you want to share tonight, that would be great too.
Okay, so I have Angela followed by Austin.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I always have a billion questions for you. You're very long suffering. I have 3 questions. Lisa, should I start with one and go back through?
Are they related?
2 are.
Great, go for it.
Okay. I think the first one is just a clarifying question. I don't think I understand the explanation of the EWEB disincentive for solar power. And the entire solar electric infrastructure, it sounds like must be sold to EWEB if the production exceeds 25 kilowatts, or is it the power produced by the system is sold to EWEB?
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't explain that very well in the memo. It's the power produced.
Okay, and then you buy it back from them.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was an easy one. That was a softball. So installing a ground source heat pump system for the main campus central unit A and B, it sounds like a previous study indicated that the cost would exceed the funding available or exceed expected savings from the system. So I think maybe your overview might have answered my question, because my question was, how will we be able to get enough savings from option B alone if it turns out that option A is still too costly to move forward with? And it sounds like you're saying these are the 2 buckets where we could get these savings, and we'll get them and we'll spend the money on whatever combination makes the most sense.
Right, and option A we think might be a good deal, but based on previous studies that are like 10 years old, but we need to relook at it. Yeah. Spend a little bit of money to relook at it before we know. Okay. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I think the question was really, I was reading this as we were gonna do A and B, but maybe not A. And then I wasn't sure if we were gonna get everything.
That was a good summary, just how you said it, yeah.
Okay. And so if we only end up doing B, we'll still spend 1.5% of the bond on sustainability. We'll still get a really significant reduction in CO2. All of the goals are looking.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And my final question, if I may. Thank you. On page 8, the compliance strategies. I appreciate that example 1 includes the estimate for metric tons of CO2 that would be reduced, but I didn't see in examples 2 and 3 estimates for those. And I think those examples are just like pieces of the puzzle, not meant to be the whole savings. So I guess I'm just hoping if you for you to clarify if we would meet or exceed the level that's given in example 1 that we don't want to do because we don't think it will be cost effective for us.
Right. So in example two, we would definitely exceed the 575 metric tons that we would have generated in example one. But we don't have a calculation because we don't know exactly what all projects we would do, but we wouldn't do a project if it didn't exceed that, basically. And then in example three, we would likely exceed the 330 or the $3,304 per metric ton CO2 saved. But we still have to do that additional analysis to make sure that's true. And if we wouldn't, then it wouldn't be a good project for us probably. Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. There's been a lot of thought and consideration in this recommendation, and I know I always help you with questions. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Austin, and then followed by Steve.
Make a motion to approve the exemption of 1.5% for the technology law for main campus projects in order to pursue more cost-effective renewable energy and energy efficient projects that have greater impact on greenhouse gas reductions.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Austin and simultaneously seconded by Stephen. Austin, did you want to speak to your motion?
More of a question than a comment, actually. So this essentially would allow us to, rather than like a $2 million, it would be closer to $1.724 million, or $1,724,250, pretty much, right?
That's what we would be exempt from
Okay.
spending, but we would still we're still planning on spending the $2 million.
Exactly. Okay, gotcha. Understood. Thank you.
Steve?
Also a comment, this is an area actually I have a lot of professional experience with, and I know that not only Lane, but public institutions that are subject to this law up and down the western part of Oregon, right, where the sun doesn't shine as frequently as we might like, have, although lately, it's really good, nonetheless, struggle with this one for the same reasons that we are. And the basic thing is the legislation was written very text specific, right? It must be text X, Y, or Z, as opposed to, often what we see and appreciate, which are sort of tech agnostic, bills that say we'd like to see achieve X. We won't specify the tech. So that's caused a lot of problems for a lot of organizations. I just wanted to be clear that we would not be the first to seek this exemption. Lots of other organizations have successfully done so and have demonstrated their willingness to comply by doing exactly what Jennifer is recommending. So thank you for your leadership on that. I think it's important. I think it's also important just to recognize Representative Foley is sort of the champion of this legislation. He wrote his office and staff himself, wrote that bill, continues to be a champion of it, has been approached many, many times by many people, with questions exactly such as ours are, that this is, imposes an undue burden, especially in Western Oregon. I just wanted to recommend or suggest that our staff, whoever it makes the most sense, or to reach out to him and let him know that, yeah, we're taking this measure. It's not personal. We have these reasons for it, and we do support the broader goals of the legislation. I think that's a useful thing for us to do.
Okay, anyone else? All right, we have a motion on the table to approve an exemption for the 1.5% for green energy technology. Donna, can you call the roll, please?
Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Ister,
Before I vote, I'd just like to thank Steve for weighing in his professional expertise. My vote is aye.
Austin Polneggy,
I'd like to second that comment. Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Alternate. Aye.
Lisa Fragala,
Aye, that motion carries unanimously. Okay, let's move on to action item C. Financial stabilization, B, we're on B, tuition recommendation. So Paul, we're gonna let Paul staff speak first, and then we'll move to a recommendation or conversation.
Great, good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you in person today. I was commenting that it feels like the first time. I have a little bit of those like first day jitters here, so bear with me if I'm a little shaky here, but it really is delightful to see you all, and I know that we did what we had to do over the past couple of years, and I thank you for your courage to make that happen as well, so thank you all for that. Today, I would like to bring to you a recommendation for a tuition increase. And we have had a couple prior discussions and work sessions regarding this. When looking at the revenue needs of the college, both through our shared governance process and through our administrative balancing options, we did determine that in order to not risk impacting the operations of the college too negatively, we would need to generate some additional revenue from tuition. That additional revenue to balance or from the balancing framework that we did needed to amount to about $1 million. Now, I will tell you that even with this, we also have in that balancing framework staffing and resource reductions that total close to $1.8 million to balance the budget. And the extent of these balancing options are still under consideration pending contract negotiation outcomes that we currently have. So in order to achieve that $1 million in additional tuition revenue, it does amount to about a 5% increase in tuition with our current enrollment levels. I will say that we did look, and this was the focus of our last two meetings where we did have conversations at ways that we might be able to apply that tuition increase that would provide some incentive for students and maybe not negatively impact students as much as it could. We did discuss three models of our standard per credit model, which is our current status quo model. We looked at a banded tuition structure, much like we have with our international program and have had for a few years. And we looked at most recently a model that would allow us to cap tuition. I really appreciate the conversations that we had both at the board meeting and also subsequently on campus. There was a lot of robust dialogue around the potential benefits and risks that are associated with each of those models. After we had a lot of conversations on campus with stakeholders and just internally, Zach and myself kicking around ideas about how to apply this that might provide the least amount of risk. And by that, I mean not only just risk to the institution from the standpoint of being able to generate the revenue, but also risk to students in terms of them being able to have access to an education. And it was determined, at least at right now, we feel that while we still feel that there's potential benefits to alternative models for some students, we feel like we really haven't had enough time in this conversation to do our due diligence to feel comfortable recommending those, knowing what more of the consequences might be for that. So we believe as a result that at this point in time, where we are both fiscally and still needing to work with students to understand how changing a model might impact their credit-taking behavior, we feel that at this point, we still need to recommend a status quo as far as a model and charge tuition per credit. That is the least impact on the students as far as something new. We still can work with them to try to change their behavior. We will still work to try to survey them, to try to get a sense of, is there a way that we could put a different model in that might incentivize more credit-taking behavior? But at this point, we feel that we need to stick with the per credit model. In addition, from a revenue generation point of view, it generates the least amount of risk, I think, as well per credit, because we can base it on current enrollments or projected enrollments and not worry about needing to try to predict, as we had a lot of conversations. How can we predict student behavior, right? I don't even know what I'm going to do tomorrow, so it's hard for me to predict what students are going to do. So at any rate, our goal is to request from you the recommendation of a approximate 5% increase in tuition for next academic year. We will still pursue investigating alternative models that might be more student-centric as opposed to a straight per credit model. And we will continue to do that. And I still am an advocate for some of those models, but to feel comfortable about making the recommendation, we just want to do a little bit more due diligence there. So our recommendation would be to contribute to a balanced budget. We would recommend that the board approve those tuition rates that I have indicated for you there. And I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Okay, I see Mike.
I'd like to move that we approve the recommended tuition rates for 2022 and 23 and continue to explore alternative tuition models for possible implementation academic year 23 and 24.
I second that.
Okay, so the recommendation is moved as a motion by Mike and seconded by Austin. Mike, did you want to speak to your motion?
I'm glad that you backed off on the being experimental at this point. You may be absolutely right in going with an alternative route, but it feels a little risky to me, so I'd rather stay sort of with the tried and true. I will also say that I think that the college has done extraordinary work in trying to corral and control our expenses, and that we don't have a choice. We've got to get revenue from somewhere. So that's the reason I am going to support this.
Holly?
This is where my question can come in. I did want to ask a question about that line item for KLCC and just asking for clarification. 100,000, so it's under other revenue, the KLCC administrative recovery fee. Just kind of want clarification, like where did that come from? Is that going to be something that the donors or the foundation can expect in the future? Why KLCC?
Zach?
Oh, sorry, thank you.
That's okay, that counts. That's a good question. So since before I arrived, KLCC has been on this balancing type of a framework all early on, and usually somebody's in the audience advocating it would get removed. I mean, at the end of the day, we support them greatly because it's think of it like overhead. So we do all of their, first of all, the building does belong to the college. And by the way, a lot of donor money went to that building, and then we pay the utilities, custodial services as needed, public safety services is needed, air conditioning, something breaks, we fix it, maintenance. So it's, I call that whole overhead, piece to any organization. In addition, there's the inside the house, so I'm being a chain, there's a lot of HR work that goes behind a unit that large. Searches, the hires, grievances, any kind of work that would flow through, we are their HR office. We do the accounting, everything of theirs flows through us, and we've never been successful at a transfer or a chargeback of some sort. It's really time. These are extraordinary times, and we have to account for all the possible monies. They are doing such an extraordinary job. We're so proud to be partners with them. They are able now to bring in a fair amount of donor money that they were not years ago. So I think they're about 2 years in. Zach, you've been at some of the meetings now, and they've got a pretty good track record. So it's kind of like paying your fair share.
Thank you for that. I agree they do a great job and it's my go-to news source. Great service to LCC. But to answer my second question, is this something that can be expected in the future? Is this amount going to change in the future, like because of their donorship or membership drive or how much they raise? Can they expect this?
So with any partnership, you should have it in writing, and it's time to put something in writing. So we have an agreement that we're both negotiating right now.
Right.
And that will take care of the future. So, and there'll be a part, obviously it's a mutually agreed upon document, and we'll talk it through.
The MOU that's being worked on. Okay, thank you.
So we do have a motion on the table to approve the recommended tuition rates for 2022-2023. Steve?
Just getting in the queue.
Great, there's nobody ahead of you.
I was hoping I wasn't gonna go first. I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a moment or two. So my friend Rosie has impressed upon me that for year in and year out for her entire time on board, which is something like 10 years, we raise rates, right? We raise tuition, excuse me. I haven't done the compounding math, I actually don't know how to do that, but my son did. But my guess is sometimes it's between 2010 and now, based on the impact of that, the total impact is something like probably approaching like a 50% increase over what students were expected to pay just 10 years ago. That's significant. And there's probably, as Rosie's impressed upon me as well, that, you know, every time you do this, it makes it easier to an extent to do it the next year, right? So there's potentially no end in sight. Except that we can't, except at the same time, we probably can't keep doing that. There is some upper limit. I don't know precisely what it is. We may be experiencing it now. It may be part of the reason why we're seeing fewer students return than we had hoped for this spring, and we'll see what happens in the fall, you know, with our fingers crossed nonetheless. The sort of play devil's advocate. I heard you say that, well, we gotta get this $1 million somewhere, or, except that there is an or, right? And so that's the part I wanted to explore a little bit, or what? Or we would have to cut programs. I've heard you say, well, we would have to make, in your estimation, those cuts would negatively impact the quality of the student experience more than the impact of the 5% increase. And so, and I believe you, or I believe that you think that that's your best estimate. Nonetheless, I'd like to sort of get behind that, you know, look under that hood a little bit. What would we cut? I'm not asking you to answer that exactly right here and now. That's not a fair question to ask in this, but my question really is, do we need to make this decision tonight, or could we delay it a month? So that we could potentially have an executive session, if that's allowed. I'll have to consult the rules, you know, to explore more clearly the sensitive issues of what might have to be cut in order to reduce the tuition increase.
So I'll start with your last one. Do we need to make the decision tonight? Yes, if we want to be able to implement this for the start of the next academic year. Fall in particular is our largest term, and I think failure to get approval on tuition tonight would delay our ability to be able to implement that in time for fall registration. And I would feel incredibly uncomfortable with a bait and switch if students are already registering under one tuition and then say now, oh, I'm sorry, now you owe me this additional money. I don't feel good about that, to do that. And in the larger context, I mean, you know, I rely on my friend Zach to help me with the accounting pieces, but I'll say this from kind of just a kind of the way I think about this. And we really do have revenue and expenses to balance the budget. Is it possible to contain tuition increases so that we could say and be committed to not raising tuition? I'm going to say the answer to that's yes, but it requires one of two things. We need to either show that we're going to have more students, right, and feel good about that piece, that we've got these more students coming that can compensate for that lack of additional revenue that we might need, or we'll have to cut expenses. The issue with cutting expenses, and if you think about cutting programs, if I think about cutting academic programs, I mean, unless we're going to cut something that is, you know, a high cost, low FTE program, typically those are in the career technical education area, we're going to do a disservice to our community by not having the ability to train those workers. So that doesn't really help me much. The other areas of the college are areas that we rely upon, our transfer areas in particular, to have enrollments to grow, to balance those expenses, right? The more low cost, high FTE areas, our social sciences, our transfer areas. So it's challenging to think about cutting one of those or think about cutting those. And in addition, by cutting those, I think the amount of money that we would get by cutting a program like that, and it would take a while to get it, we would have to cut several to be able to reach $1 million to be able to make that balance. The other piece about the thing to consider about tuition, if I don't get, the college doesn't get an increase, we already have built in the budget a very small enrollment increase. I wouldn't feel comfortable saying we'd get more students. I think we would be looking at more expense reductions. We have to cut materials and services over and over again, many times. I think we're close to the bare bones on that one. So we're looking at personnel, and that's 80% of our expenses anyhow. And every dollar that we don't get in a tuition increase, that is about 1 to 2 positions additional that we would need to cut. And that, again, mind you, is in addition to the already positions that we're going to have to cut just to balance this budget. So that's why I say, when I tell you, like, we'll do more harm to students by not passing I'm talking holistically to students, the student body. Are there going to be individual students impacted? Absolutely, and that pains me. But as a whole, we would have more harm, do more harm to our students by not being able to provide the services they need to be successful if we have to cut additional staff to meet that budget deficit.
Okay, so I have myself in the queue, and Steve, I just put you in for round 2. So I'm going to, well, first of all, I want to start off by saying that I think it's critical that we make a decision on this tuition recommendation tonight. We can't keep kicking this decision down the road. I feel like we've had some really great conversations, some really great explorations around this topic. And we all definitely have a range of feelings attached to it. But we need to allow the college staff to do their jobs, and we need to make decisions to allow the budget process to move forward. So first of all, I think it's critical that we make this decision tonight. Secondly, I look at this as an investment in the college. Yes, students are paying it, but I do think that there is an understanding based on the current economic reality that if things are increasing in expense, I mean, our utility bills are increasing 6%. We're not discussing not heating our buildings at LCC. We have to pay that expense. And that money has to come from somewhere. All businesses, when their expenses increase, they also have to find a way to pass that on within reason, within the business model. That being said, I don't think of public education as a business model, but I did use a business analogy. So I see this as an investment in the college, inspired by my board colleague Rosie's arguments around that this does impact enrollment. I have spent time reading about this, and my understanding, and also based on personal experience now working in higher education, is that actually what attracts students to apply to an institution of higher ed is the quality of services that they receive. Are they going to receive the counseling that they need? Are they going to receive the academic services that they need? They have to flat out have the academic program. And if we're cutting academic programs, then they aren't there for students to enroll in. So students need services. We need to invest in student services for recruitment, persistence, retention, and student success. Amongst the reading that I've done, the thing that stands out significantly is investments in promise programs and in student scholarships or in financial resources. Promise programs are perhaps one of the most significant things that can attract students to an increasing an enrollment situation. And so when there's an opportunity for us as a board to advocate for more investments in community colleges and in public education in Oregon, I hope we take that opportunity, because I believe that once community colleges are free, then we won't have to continue to have this conversation. So I am going to support this, and I strongly encourage the board to make a decision on this tonight. Is there anybody else who hasn't had a first round that would like to speak before we go to Steve for second round? Holly, did you?
Yeah, I just have more of a question. No, go ahead. If this gets approved and we go forward, and then it doesn't generate the numbers that we hope to, our enrollment will go up, what are some of the consequences of an institution that we could face if it kind of quote unquote backfires?
Well, I think the request for the tuition increase is independent of what our enrollments would be, other than the fact if they decrease, which you said that. But if that were to happen, or we don't reach our enrollment target of a 2% growth that we put in there, we will have to look at ways to compensate for that, even with a tuition increase. Without the tuition increase, obviously, it's compounded even more because there's that additional revenue that we would have gotten from the tuition increase that would have been there. But I think that the, you know, I don't think that there's a huge risk that enrollments will drop significantly. Again, I think that, you know, the assumptions that are in the budget balancing framework that these numbers were built upon, I think are reasonably sound. And so I think it's a pretty, you know, if we don't hit it exactly, of course, we will adjust, but I don't think it's going to have to be that significant where we have to be looking at further personnel reductions. We got to take a significant enrollment hit to be able to do that relative to what we already have built in.
Thank you, I appreciate, and I know that you all will do a great job at outreaching and getting the word out. I've seen some of the commercials, and so I appreciate your work on that. Thank you.
Rosie? Thank you. I don't think it will come as any surprise to you that I don't intend to support this proposal. I don't think it's about honoring the expertise of administration. I really, really am grateful for the creative thinking that has been undertaken in recent months by yourself, Paul, and Zach, and the whole team. I am grateful for that. I am grateful to see college administration trying to examine pricing as a part of the marketing mix for Lane. This is really more about board philosophy and my personal position that it should be the philosophy of the Lane board to protect the interests of students to the degree possible. I am convinced that Lane has grown beyond its resource base, and that's been the case for a number of years, maybe all the years I've been on this board. Enrollment has been declining at Lane since 2011, based on the data you gave us, and tuition has been increased every year, maybe with one possible exception, I can't quite recall, but pretty regularly. And the problem that I wrestle with personally is, if I thought this tuition increase would somehow restore balance, I would be more inclined to support it. But the problem is, next year there'll be a hole in the budget again, and it will be used as an excuse to raise tuition again. At the last time we discussed tuition, I asked for data. I said, I feel uncomfortable. I don't know if this is the reason students will continue to not come to Lane. And the president very graciously and very quickly provided data. One study in Florida community colleges was responded to by 27,000 students who said the number one reason they declined to enroll was tuition and fees, the cost of tuition and fees, and the cost of books came in third. So I believe there is data to suggest that we have a job to do as a policy board, protecting the interests of the people we're here to serve. And we're here to serve students. We're here to enable them to transform their lives. And I worry sort of perennially, annually at this time of year, that we're not getting that job done. So I won't support this latest tuition increase.
And Rosie, I truly respect your opinions and beliefs. I really do. And as I've indicated before, it's not that I disagree with them either. So
I understand.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I have Steve, and then we'll go to Mike.
I don't think Mike had a first shot.
Oh, I have.
He did.
Okay, sorry about that. Well, Rosie's speaks going elegantly. It's hard to oppose her. I think I'm going to support the measure tonight, but I want to, to also support some of what Rosie's saying. I'm too new to say, I'm done, we're not going down this path anymore. But I looked at the data the way hopefully all of us have. I see the downward spiral, and it becomes a death spiral at a certain point. The other interesting thing from some of the data that I looked at is that we're one of the largest community colleges in the state, right? You know, and Rosie makes the case, like, maybe we're just plainly too big, you know, for the, you know, for all the fixed costs that we have. I guess I just wanna, I wanna float it, I'm gonna support it, I'm gonna support it tonight. But I also wanna put a marker out there that says if, you know, if we continue this sort of downward spiral, I wouldn't blame anybody here, it's not like that, it's not like it's anybody's fault, that's not the issue at all. But then we do need to take a serious look at alternative strategies. And so I just might find myself joining, you know, Rosie's position a year from now. I'm not ready to go there tonight. And I don't mean, you know, to call your integrity into question at all. There's nothing like that. We don't know each other that well, but honestly, I feel like you're the kind of guy who trusts with my life. So it's not about that. It really is what Rosie says. Like maybe we have a more serious structural issue that we need to look at it. I just want to invite folks and honestly kind of expect folks to take that serious look this upcoming year.
Yeah, I support that. Thank you.
Mike?
So I've listened to Rosie over the years, and I don't know that I could recite it quite as eloquently as you, but I think I understand the point. The point has two ends. There's the revenue and the expense end. And what I've heard you say over the years is that we're simply spending more money than we can bring in every year. And we have made cuts, or I don't know so much we've made cuts. We've tried to control expenses. But the other part of what you're saying that I think we may need to look at more carefully is, are we trying to do more than we can do? And I think we need to look at that carefully. I think we have to come up with the revenue to operate the college, but perhaps the college is trying to do more than we can do. And I think that may be a point for the board to ask the staff to work on before we get to this point next year.
Austin?
Of course, this is a hard topic. And I don't think there's a single board member that ever gets excited about raising tuition, quite frankly. But in order for a pipeline to have water go through the pipes, there needs to be pipes in place. By cutting programs, by reducing services, by reducing our capacity as an institution, we're not allowing for the water of knowledge, the water of enrollments to flow through. You know, we gotta maintain the pipeline so that we can see that flow come through. I'm also open to exploring alternatives in the future. I understand we don't necessarily want to rock the boat too much, but I certainly am open to alternative ways of doing things, especially to increase enrollment. And I also just want to shout out to businesses too, that you know, you receive the flow that our pipeline provides. We would love to work with you to have guaranteed employment programs. We would love for you to hire our graduates to bring about additional students to come down the pipeline. So I want to reach out to businesses who are wanting to hire people or looking for people to hire. Our students are great, and we would love to work with you with our existing programs and maybe even future programs to create guaranteed employment programs where after they graduate, guaranteed employment right into your business or you as an employer. So please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.
Okay, so I'm not seeing anyone else who cares to speak. Donna, we have a motion on the table to approve the recommendation tuition rates. Could you call the roll, please?
Ollie Johnson? Hi. Angela Van Kraus?
No.
Mike Ister?
Aye.
Austin Bolnigi?
Aye.
Steve Mattel?
Aye.
Rosie Pryor?
No.
Lisa Fregala?
Aye. That motion carries. I did just want to clarify, I know the FY23 budget balancing framework is included in this agenda item. We are only approving the tuition recommendation tonight. we will have a deeper exploration of the budget with the budget committee in May. Up next, we have the financial stabilization resolution.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul, for all your work on that. And Zach is going to speak with us about that. And Zach and Paul, you don't, since you sit at this front table, you can continue to sit there or get up to the podium. It's up to you. Because the owl.
Paul had to stand, I think he makes sense.
The owl will find you. The owl will find you. Go ahead, Zach.
For the record, we're almost the same height.
Who's taller?
Austin. So with financial stabilization reserve, requesting that the board approve resolution 666 to establish the financial stabilization reserve. So yes, my lucky day to be up here. So per DT 290, this resolution establishes a separate reserve fund for the purpose of providing short-term stabilization in anticipation of possible shortfalls of revenue. So the resolution addresses two of the circumstances outlined in DP 290, where a situation exists where significant changes in enrollment are possible but not reasonably predictable, as well as when any major revenue source has a reasonable possibility of decreasing after the college budget is approved and adopted.
All right, I've got Angela and then Austin.
I move approval of resolution 666 to establish financial stabilization fund.
And second.
Okay, so moved by Angela, seconded by Austin. Angela, would you like to speak to your motion?
I just appreciate the forward thinking and cautious approach that this resolution demonstrates. Thank you for bringing it to us.
Austin?
We just need to look at numbering of resolutions and policies. But other than that, no, I appreciate the questions that were answered prior. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion on the table to approve resolution 666 to establish financial stabilization fund. Donna, can you call the roll on that for good?
Holly Johnson,
Yes, I too am not a fan of the resolution number, but for the record, I.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Geister,
I'm glad we're not on the 13th floor. I vote aye.
Austin Golding,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragile.
Aye, that motion carries unanimously. Okay, so that is our final. Oh, sorry, it is not our final action item. So we have the board self-assessment instrument and timeline. And so you do have this information in your packet, and you can see the timeline there for us. And you can also see the self-assessment instrument. This is the same self-assessment instrument that we've been using for a number of years. I believe it came from ACCT. Great, thank you. And so our process does require that we adopt the instrument and review the timeline and prior to moving it forward. Austin.
Make a motion to approve the 2021-2022 board self-assessment instrument and timeline.
Second. Great, moved by Austin, seconded by Holly. Austin, did you want to speak to your motion?
No, these are obviously just really important. Going to the ACCT conference, I took a workshop in regards to assessments and the importance of them. So I want to encourage the board that.
Holly?
No. Nothing.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I just in reflection, sitting here, I love sitting at the end and being able to see everybody. And I really appreciate this board. I think the conversation that we had on these first several action items, I'm just continuously amazed by, our deep convictions and values, but our ability to still have respectful conversations with each other. And I think we're doing a great job, but I also think we can benefit from sharing some reflection together on how we can do better. So is there anyone else? Okay, so we have a motion to approve the self-assessment instrument and timeline. Donna?
Holly Johnson.
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus.
Aye.
Mike Ister.
Aye.
Austin Fullnagy.
Aye.
Steve Mattel.
Aye.
Rosie Pryor.
Aye.
Lisa Fregala.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. So that was our last action item. And just as an FYI, you'll be getting that assessment tool sometime soon from Donna in an email. And if you could please take the time to fill it out, and we will do some work at the retreat this summer around that. Okay, so our next agenda item is a discussion item regarding an update on building 12, and we have Tom Goodhue here to discuss that with us. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, board. I think this building 12, we came to you, boy, it's hard to follow that. This one came to you back in December with an emergency request to shore up the roof on building 12. Probably got your attention a little bit. We do have shoring in place, so I'm confident that's there. Followed up the next month to ask the board for an architect's contract to look at an alternative rather than renovating that building, to look at an alternative of building a new building. We've completed that. I've given you some graphics in it. We continue to study the existing building 12, and to be honest, as an architect, I don't feel right investing in building 12 beyond holding on and stabilizing. I think the direction forward is to do the new building. Now, the other part of the problem that we have is that bond funds are limited, just like all your other ones. Since I started here a year and a half ago, construction cost has gone up 25% or more, depending on which one. If you go back to the 2018, 2019 period when most of these budgets were put together and all of it, it just adds more. So bond funds are going really quickly. First thing I did when I came here, I put together a plan the very best I could, outlining all the projects. We've got the Florence Center right now. We're starting construction out there. It's a little more than we wanted, but I mean, it's going to really take care of it. It does student safety. We have a matching grant from the state for the seismic stability. We're going to upgrade that facility. It meets all the criteria, and I did include this criteria in the package that I developed and shared with you a year ago. So it does that. We have the health professions building. It was one of those things that was listed prominently in the board packet or in the bond packet, and with all our investors that invested in the bond. The technology building, or improving the technology programs, is another one that's very much at the center of that. Project that's I have from the architects right now, we're in a concept phase. It's above the budget that I hoped for. We're going to work on that. I've got my team working on it, trying not to cut program too much. I think, when I just sitting here and I hear, programs that are pay students while they're there, while they're in school, give them strong jobs. I mean, these are ones that are there and the facilities are bad. Trying to find a way to invest that, working with the president and our new vice president of finance to try and find a way to rebalance this. I think we'll be back before you, letting you know some other bits and pieces of how we're gonna reshuffle some of the long list of hopes and dreams that we had when we started the bond, but I think we're also getting a lot done. And unfortunately, building 12 is just a little more broke than anybody thought, and I think that's something I'm finding kind of with all of our buildings. Florence was the same way. I set up a meeting my first time to go out there, and the heat was off that day. My own office, the bond staff office, but I think the heat's gone up 3 times in the year there. But so that's my little bit of it. So I'm here for questions or thoughts if you have anything.
Austin and then Mike.
By the way, I went out to the Florence campus and, beautiful campus grounds. I saw the roof though. So I'm really glad to see that, we're gonna do something about that. With building 12, we had a conversation about like, hey, what would it take to, get a new building and so forth. And I'm also kind of thinking about this like operational cost wise too. Like I see if we get a new building, or insurance costs, your maintenance costs and so forth. I'd be really curious. I know that's kind of difficult, especially with insurance stuff. What we would be able to calculate with that, but I'd be really curious about not only just the cost to tear down, rebuild, or and so forth, but the operational costs difference as well.
Well, operational costs probably fairly similar, but I'm glad you brought up that insurance cost, because one of the problems or one of the opportunities we had by moving the building actually is that it improves safety access for that eastern side of campus.
Yeah.
One of the real challenges we have over there, these buildings are very close, and fire department gets very concerned when they have to respond, particularly to things where we have machine technologies, construction. Next door is the art department with kilns. They really appreciate the fact that we can get a hydrant. If we take out building 12, we can get a fire hydrant in there and that much closer to that building as well as the center building. So that's another big thing when I look at this safety and security of students. That was kind of the top thing to me that drives me to relocate. So I'll stop.
Yes, so thank you.
Mike?
So for a good part of my career, I was responsible for buildings, and I have great appreciation for restoration. At the same time, I'm well aware that you get to a point where you're throwing good money after bad, and I appreciate your professional assessment of this.
It hurts to tear down that neat building, but we do have others that are similar from a preservation standpoint. So,
Holly?
On the list of prioritization, how high is the Florence, the renovations?
it's underway. So
Okay.
It's committed. You approved a contract for $7.2 million last month, so I think you're in.
They're warming up. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So I have Steve, and then I have myself in the queue, and Austin put you in for the second round.
I was just wondering if somebody can remind us.
Steve, you're not.
Oh, I'm
even
sorry.
sure.
Thank you. Yeah. I was wondering, thank you for that. If you could remind us the programmatic activities that take place in building 12.
Currently in building 12 is our construction technologies, machine technologies, there's some apprenticeship in there, and our public safety offices are in there currently. The new program for what we're intending to do is to relocate the construction and machine technologies and consolidate the apprenticeship programs, along with looking towards a mechatronics program, I think. And I do have Grant Matthews here if you want to get more detailed into all of that, but developing those programs as well as our
unmanned aircraft systems program would also.
which is a very fast growing program. And one of the neat things is it really wants to tie in with our other machine technologies, and because they're more in a manufacturing and maintenance of those things, not just being pilots. So,
The reason for the question is basically following on the philosophical approach that Rosie's asking us to consider longer term, which is the essential question: are we right-sized as an institution, relative to the times that we find ourselves in, And so I guess there is this, we have this building and telling us you want to pause a little bit and rethink it. I think that's a good idea. I think we should also be pausing and rethinking it in terms of, our long-term trajectory.
So I'm wondering if you could describe the process to me that you're thinking about in terms of the impact on what we will not be doing and how will that be decided? And I'm assuming the board has a role in making that decision. So you want to say a little bit about
Well,
that?
I think, we're working on putting together a leadership committee. And it's been a tough couple of years. You guys have been busy with a couple other items between COVID and loss of our president and that. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'll be happy to address that. We've been meeting a lot about this. None of us expected the poor condition that he has uncovered in each building. Florence is underway, but what he thought he was gonna find in Florence, it was way worse. And so it goes until he got to 12, and it was like truly magnificent what he has to do. So that said, we met and we're gonna have emergency meetings now because there's the board oversight committee that's coming. So we are looking at academics, finance, ops, president's office. We're gonna get together and we're gonna meet literally weekly so that we can be prepared and then we'll relook at all the, he's got it, he has it all, the expenditures and how much we've exceeded each project. And our goal is honestly not to eliminate a project, but our goal is to re-ask what's going into that project. Is it more than we should be doing? Are we trying to accomplish too much in this one building? And I don't know, we have to re-ask ourselves that for every project and make sure. I am very aware, however, that when I arrived, that deferred maintenance list, I'm looking at Rosie, because I recall hearing that enormous 90+ million, which is now Jennifer over 100 million. But the good news is with every one of these major projects, a chunk of deferred maintenance comes off. But we don't want to leave for the next round more deferred maintenance that should be addressed now. So we're going to look at the projects, but we want to make sure that the deferred maintenance of the holistic campus is being addressed. It's gotten quite complicated. So your question, Chair Fragala, about who makes those decisions, you will. If it's a truly project decision. If it's an infrastructure, we have architects, we have folks that can advise us. If it's programmatic, Paul and Grant and the deans, they're going to huddle a lot over the next few weeks and make sure we're not overly estimating what we should be putting in these buildings. So I think by the next board meeting, we should have a sense of where we are, at least for a quick and dirty update. But we're going to have much more detail because I believe that bond oversight committee will want this information as well. And that is late April.
Yeah.
Late April.
Great,
So-
and I appreciate that response. I agree with not throwing, good money after bad. And I actually think many of us recognize just how much investment we did need in the infrastructure in this college. But there were certain commitments that we made to voters and in the passing of the bond, and the deferred maintenance was one of them. We also have an approved facilities plan. And, I want to make sure we're not losing vision of that plan, particularly the access points and the design work that has been done. But I'm very supportive of the process you're describing, and I think the work that's being done is exceptional. I just want to make sure that we're continuing to uphold the promise that we made in that board campaign.
I keep this and bond next to my desk. I kind of read it every day, so it's I could
Do a
recite
little
it
morning
by heart.
prayer. That's wonderful. So I have Austin and then Steve.
I kind of have two questions. One is about the bond oversight committee, and that is about $1. So bond oversight committee, when was the last time they met, and have they discussed building policy? Or has
No, the last update quarterly update was by email. They'll meet in two weeks.
2 weeks, okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
so that'll be really the first
Major topic.
major where we're starting to see these cost changes and things that would some allusion to it, but
Yeah.
boy, it's been a tough couple of months as an owner's rep when I get those budgets back from contractors.
Absolutely, here, yeah. I look forward to that conversation from board oversight. Can I ask a second question? Yes. HERF dollars, especially, I know we're talking building involved, but Florence. So are any of those expenses, things like ventilation, things like that, can that be covered by HERF dollars as opposed to bond dollars? And
I'll take that. I think we actually have used quite a bit of the HERF dollars to do a lot of it. There's been extensive, and I think that's another one that, darn it, we touched it. And more extensive than our staff ever really realized. I look at Jennifer because we found things that weren't connected, were hooked up backwards, were broken, but we have been fixing it. We've been really focusing, and HERF dollars has been really a savior for some of the bond things and that's one of the things as we reshuffle some of that, where those other funds might have taken care of some of the things.
Yeah.
Don't want to cut them out either. There's still more to go.
Absolutely, yeah. I was more interested in the reshuffling part, like, because obviously construction costs gone up, labor costs gone up and all that stuff. How much of an impact has that been to kind of help, like, I'm trying to use the right word here, cushion those increased costs? Would you say?
Not sure if I'm following the question.
Oh, yeah. So obviously we saw an increase in labor costs, material costs and so forth. And the HERF dollar is obviously used for really specific things that we can use it for and so forth. But has it helped kind of cushion the increased costs? Like, has it taken us from a 25% increase in costs to a 15% increase in costs? Like,
It's really dealt with different types of projects to a degree, that because it has been very specific to ventilation, and it's 500,000-600,000 roughly spent, which was one line item on my overall budget but it was one line item.
Gotcha.
Only did, we got to all the classroom growth, but it's still a challenge.
Understood. So it's a line item impact as opposed to a full project budget.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Just briefly, touching on the kind of wildly escalating prices of construction, right? And so, nobody really saw that coming. It's sort of pandemic induced, but there's probably other factors out there. Do we have any reason to hope that, it's a thing that, moves through the belly of the snake and eventually passes and the prices come back down, or is this a permanent bump?
Well, I've been doing construction for many years. We'll just leave it at that. And, yes, there's things that, probably doesn't help my retirement account when that happens either, but certainly as an owner's rep, it helps. Number of years ago, I foresee that. I think, interest rates going up is going to really hurt the private sector investment. I think if that happens, the high cost. If I were a private sector developer, I couldn't make a pro forma. That's my professional opinion, So is it going to slow down those things? There's still a lot in the pipeline that, people have loans and they have to take care of this. But I'm hearing more of that contractors are slowing down, not getting the long list.
So you're factoring that into your decisions as to whether we might be best off delaying a little bit.
We're talking about had that conversation with contractors this morning. So trying to figure out the best time.
Austin?
Promise. I promise I'll stop talking after this. Back to the Florence one. So I believe last time you mentioned about like local workforce and local contractors and stuff like that. And I was wondering if you could give us an update, because obviously, there's a lot of 1 to 2 person operations there in Florence, a lot of handyman women work down there and so forth. So I'd love to see how we're integrating the local workforce of the coastal community.
Right now, we're in the process of bidding. The contractor is been doing outreach as much as possible. They're working with Russ Pearson out there to get some contacts. as well as with the local trade organizations, trying to get people involved, also trying to look at for labor. I don't have exact data because we're still in that bidding process. We do have complex buildings, so it's can be tough for the scale and the type of schedule to get those smaller firms. They're not used to that type of work. So it's a delicate balance, but trying to get out there, one of the things the contractors are offering up is coaching for these small firms that aren't used to working in a commercial project and say, here's what you need to know. Here's what you should have for insurance. You should be taking time to clean your truck during your business hours, not on Sunday with your family.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it's not, we're not only supporting that local economy, we're skilling up.
Yeah,
their
it is.
local
And
workforce.
they're an ongoing conversation of how we do that, but they've really taken it on and trying to be part of the education team.
Perfect, great. I'm glad we talked about Florence, even though we're talking about building well.
All right, well, thank you very much. We'll look forward to future updates. So let's move on to SGA and union reports. Do we have somebody here from SGA to provide a report? Brett, what about in the webinar waiting room? Do we have Jeremiah Vandergrift in there? Vandergrift?
No, we do not.
Okay, so how about Frankie Copenmore? She had said she was gonna attend remotely tonight.
You know, Frankie hasn't joined.
And then she said she couldn't, she thought maybe Buck caught her.
No one in the attendee area or the.
Okay, great, thank you. So up next we have Adrian Mitchell, president of LCCEA. Thanks, Adrian. Welcome.
Good evening. It's so wonderful to see all of you in person and some of you to meet for the first time in person is really wonderful. I'll address 4 topics briefly today. The first one is the LCC presidential search. We are very much looking forward to welcoming Dr. Stephanie Bulger as the next president at Maine Community College, and we're thrilled that Dr. Bulger has chosen LCC and look forward to the privilege of working with her. We greatly appreciate the board's work on the search and commend you for your progressive leadership. We look forward to continuing to work with President Hamilton to ensure a smooth transition over the next several months. The next topic I'd like to address briefly is part-time faculty. And we'd like to provide a little bit of background to address a few questions that have come up in recent board meetings about part-time faculty. Part-time faculty have the same qualifications and advanced degrees as full-time faculty, but frequently must juggle multiple jobs in order to make ends meet. This is because part-time faculty are contingent workers and are paid on a separate, much lower salary schedule. At LCC, we have a seniority that does provide some security for a long-time dedicated part-time faculty, but part-time faculty frequently face class cancellation and are also subject to bumping whenever full-time faculty have classes canceled. At LCC, we've lost more than 20% of our part-time faculty to silent layoffs since the beginning of the pandemic. I ask that you refer to the chart in board docs. It shows annual salaries for part-time faculty working half-time during the academic year with and without summer at the average for summer assignments. I note that there are only assignments to go around for about half of the part-time faculty in summer. The last 6 columns show the difference between those annual part-time salaries and SNAP eligibility. If you look at all the highlights in red, you'll see where annual salaries for part-time faculty are amounts eligible for SNAP benefits for families of 1, 2, or 3. Whereas the highlights in green are annual amounts that are not eligible for SNAP benefits. It's clear visually by just looking at all the highlights in red that the vast majority of the chart is highlighted in red, indicating SNAP eligibility. And we know from our survey of all faculty with 249 participants in November that 36% of our part-time faculty report relying on government assistance. I hope this information addresses some of the questions raised at recent board meetings. Couple of very brief labor relations updates. We reached an agreement and implemented a separation incentive, as well as an agreement to postpone hiring 8 contracted faculty positions that would otherwise be hired for next year. These faculty contributions will relieve substantial pressure on next year's budget, saving more than $1 million. On an unrelated topic, I would like to express appreciation for Marge Hamilton and Mike Blade and anyone else who may have been involved behind the scenes who worked collaboratively and intensely with LCCEA over the course of the last 2 days so that we could together avert a significant labor crisis. This will put us on a path to more stability at a crucial time for the institution and the community we serve. Last, I'd like to talk about legislative advocacy. Our LCCEA Legislative Action Committee and leadership have been working collaboratively along with our colleagues within OEA to prepare for the legislature's Joint Task Force on Underrepresented Students in Higher Education, their visit on April 25th. The task force is critical because it's an important opportunity to galvanize support for transformational funding for community colleges in the next legislative session. We're looking forward to advocating with students, staff, board members, and all members of the campus community, and hope you will consider attending the public hearing in the evening that day to demonstrate support for community colleges. And for those of you who were here in 2019, when we had our rally on campus, that was a collaborative effort of everyone. We had probably, I don't know how many people, a very large number, maybe 300 people over here on Bristol Square. And we have some t-shirts that are still saved from that time. So I brought extra ones. If there are any newer board members or administrators who have not yet received them. And I have a variety of sizes, so I'd love for you to wear one, especially when advocating with legislators to fund our future, fund our colleges. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. So we have next on the agenda our information reports. Do any board members have questions regarding reports? Austin?
Yeah, actually, just a quick comment about reports. It's been a while since student government has come and presented to the board, and quite frankly, I'd love to hear from you. Students, we'd love to hear from you. You're part of the reason why we're here. So yeah, I just want to reach out to student government. I want to reach out to them to say, hey, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear the reports. I remember being in student government, you know, learning doesn't just happen in classrooms. It happens being involved in the clubs, being involved in student government, and doing things that are even scary, including presenting to the board. I understand current time periods even might make it stressful or more difficult to attend a board meeting like this, but student government, we would love to hear from you. We'd love to hear you.
Thanks, Austin. Any other questions for staff or information reports? Okay, so let's go ahead and move to closing items. Board reports or OCCA board report? Anybody?
Oh, sorry, my apologies. All right, the OCCA report. Great news is that we got funding for Future Ready Oregon. The bad news is cybersecurity fell short. Obviously, that's a really disappointing aspect of this legislative session. I really was hoping that it would come through both on the security of course, with the increased risk of cybersecurity that we have, but also workforce development around cybersecurity. So there's some great documents that I just want we got attached here, including the digest, the end of session report. There's a variety of different legislative grants and funds and so forth that are in there. I encourage you to read that over and check it out. But yeah, the big disappointing one for me personally was the cybersecurity.
Any other board reports? All right, so let's move to future meeting dates. Our next work session is April 20th. And then beginning in May, we will begin having budget committee meetings. We have two meetings that will precede a board meeting or a work session. We did discuss having the alternate budget committee meetings in Zoom or remotely. So we may have a combination of in-person high flex meetings as well as some remote meetings. I did also want to mention everybody should have received an invitation to the LCC Foundation President's Circle reception, everyone on the board at least. And that is Tuesday, April 26th. If anybody is able to attend, it is an event that meets with many of some of our most significant donors to the college. Does anybody have anything for the good of the order? Angela?
Has there been training, sort of onboarding for budget committee members? I know recently appointed, at least one of our recently appointed members was interested in some training
It's tomorrow night.
They're gonna get the
Enough
same
for better
training that we got.
Thank you.
Steve?
Just a quick follow-up, there were two folks, first names anyways, Jeffrey and Tracy, who spoke tonight at, during public testimony about the S3 program. I don't know really anything about it other honestly than what they told us just now. Out of respect for them, I'd like to just learn a little bit more from the administrative perspective as to, what's going on there and what's being proposed.
Yeah, we have a.
March? I think, for March.
So, but that's why there's so much conversation, because our provost has been meeting with them and various people. We've met with people in the community who do similar work, not the same. And so we've learned a lot. It's been like a tour the past couple of weeks. So we'll be bringing you all the information consolidated with our recommendation.
That's all I need to know. I didn't realize that was out there.
Great. Anyone else? For the good of the order? Okay, so I am going to adjourn the April 6th LCC Board of Education meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Great job in person.
Congratulations.